NFC East is the one I'm probably most excited to talk about just based on the new news that came out. We cannot start with any other team other than the Dallas Cowboys. Richard, we talked about it off air. We've talked about it on air. Jerry Jones. I just go back to Mark D'Antonio, man. I'm such a Michigan State Spartan fan, and he had one iconic line as pertaining to Mike Hart and the University of Michigan Wolverines when Mike Hart called him little brother. Mark D'Antonio went on and said, pride comes before the fall. Has Jerry Jones's pride gotten in the way?
Yeah. He's gotten in the way in a big way. I think this is one of those franchise-defining moments that could have been avoided, where you drafted well, developed well, all pro players. You did it with Dak Prescott, you did it with CD Lamb, Trey Diggs, etc. You paid the guys. Tyron Smith is in there. They used to have offensive linemen, but now a guy who impacts, you watch the Philadelphia Eagles in your division go to the Super Bowl with one of the most ferocious pass rushes, terrorize one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League on their way to a Super Bowl, dominant Super Bowl win. And you said, yeah, I think we should trade away our best pass rusher because that seems like the path to the Super Bowl. Makes a lot of sense. I know that every other Super Bowl has had something to do with defense and a dominant pass rusher and a dominant pass rush. Even when the San Francisco 49ers lose to the Kansas City Chiefs the year before, what was the defining play? It was Chris Jones pressure on Brock Purdy unblocked. That if he's picked up, San Francisco wins that Super Bowl. He wasn't. He gets to the quarterback. You look at the Super Bowl between the Bengals and the Rams. Oh my God. Jamar Chase, wide open for a touchdown to win the game. What happens? Aaron Donald ruins it. Like, Patrick Mahomes loses to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both tackles out. Pass rush. Beat the crap out of him. Lost. So when you see these things happen over and over and over and over, and you see how the league has evolved, but you see the factor in the end, in these big games, is usually pass rush. Like, you got the receiver quarterback combo, cool. You have to have the franchise quarterback, that makes sense. But defensively, you have to have the pass rush. So what you did was put your team further away from a Super Bowl because you didn't want to negotiate with an agent. So you talk about pride comes before the fall. This was stupidity. This was utter nonsense because you can't justify this any other way. And you're like, oh, we got a boatload of picks for Michael. Picks don't mean nothing. Like, picks are a bunch of fluff and conjuncture. Like, there's nothing that those picks are going to do to help you this year. And I saw Des Bryant put out a tweet, oh, we're going after Arch Manning in a couple years. That's why we're stacking up picks. But what? How does that help you win a Super Bowl? You are paying Dak Prescott $60 million. So bringing in Arch Manning is going to make the difference? I don't think that does it. Defense, pass rush is what you need to be securing, and you just made your defense a lot worse. A lot worse. Not that Kenny Clark isn't a great player and a Pro Bowl player and is going to be impactful at the defensive tackle position, probably help them stop the run. But now they're going to just be able to drop back and pass. You got worse. I'm sure the Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Commanders, New York Giants, they're cheering for Jerry Jones. Thank God, they couldn't have heard better news than you have traded away arguably the best player, one of the best players in your division, one of the best players on your team. And that's not, like, you could argue with somebody else. Like, there's not anybody in the league that wouldn't say he's arguably the best player on their team. You're on drugs if you think otherwise. But I'm trying to understand how you could justify that, but he can't. And when this team goes, what they have, Matt, 8-5? That seems accurate. Maybe lower than that.
Yep.
Because you got a new coach, you got a new coordinator, you don't have Dan Quinn on that defense anymore. Like, there's so many things that you don't have Al Harris in that secondary where he's coaching these guys to 10 picks, 11 picks, 9 picks, 6s. Like, you got rid of a lot of the things that made you great and got worse.
I echo your sentiments. And we saw it when DeMarcus Lawrence left town too. I mean, here's a guy who was a stalwart for this team, who spent his entire career with the Dallas Cowboys. You know, they didn't want to pay him either. So he says in his parting shot when he left was, I want to go to a place I can win a Super Bowl. And he goes to the Seattle Seahawks. You know, that right there, the way you're treating your veterans, and Micah Parsons got a peek behind the curtain with the way they handled it with CeeDee Lamb. You know, the way that situation drug out. Jerry Jones is just shooting himself in the foot because he watched Amon-Ra get paid. He watched Tyreek get paid. He watched all these other guys get paid. And then he says, I got to pay CeeDee Lamb. If he would have just been proactive and signed the guy 3-6 months earlier, he would have saved $5 million a year. I mean, you look at the Amon-Ra St. Brown contract, which is pretty much what he could have signed CD for. And now St. Brown is not even a top 10 paid wide receiver in the league. You know,
the same thing with Bosa.
Exactly. And you look at the same thing with Micah Parsons now. He let this play out for far too long, messed around, and he found out, Richard. He found out in the worst way. And to your point, those assets, those draft capital, that's just a shiny object. The cold hard reality of those picks, unless there's a monstrous injury with the Green Bay Packers, those picks are going to be in the high 20s, minimum. So you're trading an absolute game wrecker in Micah Parsons for a Pro Bowl caliber defensive tackle in Kenny Clark and 2 late round first round picks. That just does not make sense to me. For the first time in probably 10 years, Richard, I would say I would trade places with the New York Giants as opposed to being the Dallas Cowboys, because the way they've orchestrated their roster makes a heck of a lot more sense to me than what they're doing in Dallas right now.
It does. And I think this is low. They got them at 6.5 wins for the Giants. I think the Giants can win 7-8 games because of how their defensive line is built. More than anything, I think they got some issues on the offensive line. I think Russell Wilson is going to be really solid for them. He's going to be better than Daniel Jones has been, no question about it. He's going to help Malik Neighbors have a great season. He's going to help that offense to be a lot more effective. But I think that defense is going to be ferocious. That pass rush with all the guys they have is going to Brian Burns. They got Dexter Lawrence, Exy Dex, the rookie that they just drafted.
Abdul Carter.
Like
Kayvon Thibodeau.
Like, that's those 4 on third down and 9